Good morning, everybody. We're going to open the Santa Cruz County Historic Resources Commission. The time looks like 9:37, and it is April 29th, 2019, and we're going to do the roll call. So Commissioner Alvera? Here. Commissioner Merriman? Here. Commissioner Swift? Here. Commissioner Jenkins? Here. And Commissioner Phillips here. So has the commissioners read the agenda the meeting minutes from January 14th? Is there any comments or changes that you've noticed?
Can I move to approve the minutes?
All right, we have
You do allow public comment on
Oh
this.
gosh, I forgot, sorry.
certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Becky Steinbrenner, resident of rural Aptos. I was present at the January 7th, 2019 meeting of your commission. There is absolutely no record in your minutes of any members of the public being present. There's no record in your minutes of any comment at any point in your agenda made by members of the public. I know I made a lot of comments, and there were other members of the public that were here, but your minutes do not even record that anyone was present, let alone that anyone spoke or what they said. I want to again ask that, luckily the meeting was recorded thanks to Mr. Tanner and his generous donation of time. It's put up on public YouTube, but other than your minutes, there's no record of anything. Your commission makes some very critical decisions and to support the historic preservation in our county, and I think the minutes need to be much more complete than what I see here before you today. Thank you.
Annie, can you comment on that?
Yes, I did want to note, first of all, that as requested by the commission, this meeting and future meetings will be audio recorded, so there'll be a record of the full meeting for future meetings.
Who will be doing the recording, and where will the recordings be available?
I'm recording them as we speak. I have a device here, and the recordings will be made available on the planning department website.
Okay.
And regarding the minutes, the Board of Supervisors directs that action minutes be recorded for meetings. So this is a record of actions taken by the Historic Resources Commission.
So that's the format.
Yes, correct. So all of the minutes are done as action minutes as directed by the board.
Is that the same for the other commissions?
Yes.
But at least they record there were members of the public present. Your minutes do not even record that.
Well, okay. So, does the commissioners have any problem with having a statement as part of this saying that we did have members of the public present? Is that something we need to make a motion on because it's changing the format of the minutes to just make that statement?
Yes, if you'd like to make a recommendation, and I will just confirm with our council that that's appropriate for the minutes because we are directed to follow the board's direction, but I can confirm that with council.
Okay. So, let's see.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion to approve the January 14th, 2019 minutes as recorded. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is passed.
Excuse me, Chair Phillips. I actually had a modification to the agenda under item 2. I wanted to request your permission.
On the January minute?
No, on the agenda, item 2 on the agenda approval or modification on today's agenda.
Yes.
On item 8D, view slides from the 1989 earthquake, I was having technical difficulties with the equipment that transfers slides. They're actually in slide format to the computer, and so I would like to defer that until we can work out our issues with the equipment to the July agenda.
Oh, okay.
So, but could you give us a little explanation of what this is? I mean, where the slides came from?
Yes, let's see, her name is Joan Bristow, and there are slides from the 1989 earthquake in the downtown area primarily. There are also some slides specifically of Kennelin Camp. So those are the general ones.
But it's mostly Santa Cruz.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So then we're moving on to number 4, declaration of ex parte communications. Does anyone have anything to?
Yeah, I do. I have visited the Aptos Barn site. I have provided historical information, some research background to the people working on the panels, and details on the fire station as well.
Anyone else? I would like to report that sometime after our meeting in January, and I don't remember the exact date, I drove by and stopped in front of the Merriman House and looked at it from my car. On Saturday, my husband and I, we were down in Santa Cruz, so we stopped by the Apple Barn, since I am leaving tomorrow morning and I will be gone through the rest of the week and won't be here for the ribbon cutting. But we parked, we got out, walked around the Apple Barn, the new leaf, and I looked and peeked through a couple of the windows to see the flooring, the roof, and when we were done, then we slowly drove by the property at 8057 Valencia Street. And again, not stopping or getting out of the car. And that's it for me.
I forgot, we had also been to the Apple Barn and visited it. It was a Sunday, so we couldn't get in, but we walked all through the property and all around everywhere, and the edges, and looked in windows as best we could.
Pressed your nose against the glass.
What?
Pressed your nose against the glass.
Right.
Yeah.
I also had a conversation with people who provided a lot of the information that's in the Merriman report.
All right, is there anything else? All right. Agenda item number 5, public communications. Any members of the public that would like to approach the podium and speak on items not on this agenda?
Thank you. Good morning, Becky Steinbrenner. I made copies for each of the commissioners and for the record for an event that I'm organizing with Ann and Albert Isaacs of Aptos. In the Aptos library, there is a very large quilt that has been on display in the community room for a number of years. I've been concerned with the impending major renovation and remodeling of the Aptos library, that something would happen to that quilt. And so I have arranged for Saturday, May 11th, from 10:30 to noon, for Ann and Albert Isaacs to come to the Aptos Library for a public event and talk about that quilt and the significance of it. It was Ann and Lucille Aldrich that really made that happen. and there's quite a story behind it. That event will be recorded and put up for the public, and I'll submit a copy to you as well. Also at that time, because Anne and Albert were very, very instrumental in working with Lucille Aldrich and the Ladies Society to get the beginnings of the Aptos parade going, they will also be talking about that. And this is an opportunity for some good living history for those who are interested in that, and to record it for to have for the record. So I gave you each a poster, a flyer, and I hope that you'll attend. I also want to thank Commissioner Phillips for stopping by the house at 8057 Valencia. The last remaining was the last remaining house in the Heen subdivision that was completely demolished. It was an NR3 building. And I've been watching that too. It's been pretty slow going, getting it back up, but it is back up. And I would appreciate hearing the owners give your commission a report at the next meeting. So I ask that you put that on your agenda for next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wasn't it the last remaining house?
8057 Valencia Street.
That's not the last remaining house in the Heen subdivision.
Well, my question, I guess,
I think there's some other houses left in the Heen subdivision.
but since it was demolished and is being rebuilt,
That's true. It's
would we like to have a report on how it is coming together?
I park in front of it every time I go to Carolina, so
Oh,
I
okay.
should have probably said that.
So Annie, is that possible to, at a future meeting, that the owners come and give us a progress report?
I'd be happy to give you a status update in the next meeting. I don't necessarily know that the owners need to attend. I can invite them if they're available. They did go through the commission review, and then the building permit application has been, complies with the plan that was approved by your commission.
So is the other commissioners satisfied with that?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. And if you can invite them to come.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Thank you. We have no consent items, no public hearing items, so we are now down to agenda item number 8, new business. And here we are again. So it's that time to elect a new chair and vice chair. So I've been the chairman of the commission for a while, and Susie's been my vice chair. So is there any nominations or anyone who would like to step forward and share the fun?
Are you willing to continue?
Yes, I'm willing to continue.
Okay.
So who's going to be, would you
I
be?
nominate Linda Phillips as chair and Susie Miriam as
So we need a second from either.
I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to re-nominate myself as chair and re-nominate Commissioner Merriman as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. You got that, Annie?
Yes, thank you.
All right, number B is the proposal for the interpretive display for the Heen Apple Barn.
I was going to say a few words, and then we have Jesse Bristow with Barry Swenson Builders applicant who will be reviewing the panels. So the conditions of approval for the for the historic preservation plan for the Keene Apple Barn require that an interpretive display be installed documenting the history of the Keene Apple Barn in the context of the history of Aptos Village. The plan requires that the display be installed prior to issuance of the final certificate of occupancy. The conditions of approval lay out the requirements for the approach and content of the panels. The display is to include historic materials and objects that are removed from the building. I wanted to note here that rather than including the actual objects in the display, as Jesse will review, they're including photographs due to their fragile nature, and the items will be donated to the Aptos History Museum. The display is also to include historic photos and text documenting the history of the building, including its use as a packing shed, how the loading dock functioned. It should discuss the relationship of the building to the site, including the rail line and road, and discuss the association with Frederick Keene. Also include photos from the Paul Johnson collection if available. The county is also applying the state parks guidelines for exhibits to ensure that the displays are accessible to all visitors. And this requires a minimum font size of 1/4 inch based on the distance that the panels will be viewed. Planning staff has reviewed the panel designs and found them to be largely in compliance with the conditions of approval. The county appreciates that the applicant has provided extensive historic detail in the photographs on a total of 6 panels, which exceeds the requirement for 1 or more panels. Although the preservation plan does not require that your commission review or approve the proposal, your commission is being provided an opportunity to review the draft display design and provide comments prior to final review and approval by staff. And we appreciate your review and comments on this proposal. Regarding the Apple Barn as a whole, work is proceeding in accordance with the approved plans and conditions of approval. The final certificate of occupancy will not be issued until all the conditions of approval have been met, including installation of the interpretive panels. One change I did want to note is that the applicant will not be installing the skylight that your commission reviewed in the historic preservation plan amendment. This will result in fewer alterations to the historic fabric. So now I will pass it over to Jesse Bristow with Barry Swenson Builders.
Thank you, Annie. Good morning. Thank you, Historic Resource Commission. Thank you for taking the time to review the panels with us. And I'd just like to highlight the process and do a brief overview. We did send the proposed panels to you last week to review, and I believe you'll have further time to review as well, so I won't focus too much on the details, but just try to tell the story. So for this process, originally Barry Swenson Builders hired MBA Architects in Miller Maxfield. MBA Architects was to do the historic research and find content and photos for us and ensure that they're accurate. Miller Maxfield is our graphic design team, they're a local team. And as this process has moved forward, we've continued to get feedback from the planning department, and we've reached out from our local historian, Sandy Lyden, to ensure that we're telling the true community story and making sure that this is the direction that the community wants to go. As far as the history of Aptos, 5 panels do not do it justice. So the 6 panel, we could have 5 panels strictly dedicated to the village fair and the World of Shores parade. So what we're trying to do is really capture the story of Aptos Village with the barn and have those community highlights. We do have an Aptos History Museum that has a plethora of different stories. So the challenge here was finding that balance with the community, with our historians, and with our conditions of approval. So we do appreciate your feedback, and we do hope that you feel that this is the direction that tells the story of Aptos Village and how it's evolved. If you go to the next slide, please. So currently, we have 6 panels, including a historical marker from the conditions of approval. These are the display locations for panels 1 through 6. So 6th panel will be in the interior of the barn, and in those photos, on the left side, we have an outline, just a silhouette. The left side, you'll have an 8x3 interior panel telling the story of how the apple barn evolved and how it was moved, and what was retained and preserved in this process for the project. To the right of it, we have the I don't know if it's the original, but we have the apple scale that was still in the barn when it was salvaged. So just as a nod to the history of that, there were talks of placing it outside, but we felt it was more appropriate to mount it on the wall with the continuing story of panel 6, so you actually have a physical historic reminder. Above at the top on these photos, originally we had the panels on the exterior of the wall at the inside of the village on that ramp, but due to New Leaf, that is their leasable space, and they are going to have some cafe tables. We felt that it would interfere with people eating and people trying to view the historic items, and that you wouldn't really be able to read the story. So we elected to move them onto the railing, on the exterior of the railing, so in that square where we plan to have memorial benches and bricks and picnic tables and things like that, it's kind of a walking story where you can view them along the rail. Go to the next slide, thank you. So the approach that we took, and as I said, there's a lot of information, so it was challenging to finalize what we can include and what is legible, and balancing that interpretive display between a text and something that tells a story. The first panel, the theme was to really highlight the origins of Aptos as we see it, a nod to the Lonely community, discussions of the Mexican land grant, and how Aptos was isolated due to Valencia Creek and Aptos Creek, and how where we are today in the Aptos village was the center point, the meeting point, and that didn't really gain traction until the rail line came in. But the first story is kind of just an introduction to what Aptos was and how it first started to evolve. And next slide, please. So that evolution continues into what we've coined the red gold, the lumber era. Here we have the rail line being brought in by Frederick and Keith, really opening up the area and creating a center point in Aptos. And with that, Union Pacific came in, and there's much more detail and just summarizing, of course. But we really wanted to highlight that, there's the different gauges. There's standard gauge, narrow gauge. Frederick A. Keene had his area where he had his lumber industry, and Union Pacific had their area where they competed. And we also wanted to really highlight somewhat of the forgotten history of the Chinese workers in installing those rail lines and the commuter workforce that created that. And so from the red gold era, it then goes to the green gold era, the apple era. Thank you. So green gold, as you know, as the lumber industry started to die down, Frederick A. Keene then created another industry by leasing land out and having his old lumberjacks start to have orchards. And so as we talk about these eras from going the originality of Aptos, then red, and then the red era, the red gold era, and then the green gold era, start to discuss the apple growing industry, the apple packing industry, the apple drying industry. And we wanted to really highlight further, with that Chinese heritage, Ralph Madison and Lampong, one of the very unique relationships, having Chinese family partnership with Ralph Madison, who's kind of a local, I don't know, legend, but it was a local for Aptos community. And so just wanted to highlight the industry of those packing plants and those dryers, the apple dryers, two products that were mainly there, and that management that the Chinese families contributed to. And so panel 3 and panel 4, panel 3 kind of highlights the apple industry in itself, and then panel 4 goes more in detail of the apple barn and Frederick A. Heen's apple packing warehouse. So this goes into just kind of highlights, this historic picture of the apple barn as we kind of see it. It's transformed over time. I believe it used to be 2 separate buildings and it was brought together. So this highlights Frederick A. Heen and his son F.O. Heen and the Valencia, packing company. So panel 4 and panel 3 kind of transition from the historical to a more focused operation of the apple barn. And then go to panel 5. And panel 5 try to highlight more of the contemporary Aptos Village. There's a lot that has happened in between, but per our conditions of approval, we're trying to focus on the apple barn itself. That is where the project is. And but again, we have photos of it being the antique fair, the world's shortest parade. There's that location and how it's been a centerpiece for the community throughout the industry. And again, we try not to detract from focusing on the apple barn. The challenge is selecting what story do we tell. And there's more photos we can add. There's more highlights we can have. It's just the challenge is putting that all together in a timely manner. So these would be the panels 1 through 5. That would all be on the exterior. And then we go to panel 6. Panel 6, you can see below, this is the scale that will be mounted to the right of it, of the interior panel. So this would be at the check stands. After you checked out, it'd be up on the wall. It's 8 by 3 is pretty big. I think once you guys are able to go in the new leaf, you'll be able to see how it would do it justice. We highlight, again, there's that famous photo of the Heen apple barn. We highlight the packing emblems, labels for all the packing industries that we know of that were in Aptos. During the salvaging of the barn, the old roof tiles were old tins from, I think, the Valley Press and all different newspapers in the community, and we have hundreds of them. We try to find the clearest ones and highlight, what was there. And as Andy said, we're putting photos there because they are brittle, they are dusty. We have photos of the barn being moved, and we do discuss Kelly Brothers movers coming in and discuss the Aptos Village and how it's transformed from being kind of vacant and then being assembled through Barry Swenson going through the Aptos Village plan with the Board of Supervisors approving this portion of the specific plan or community plan, and we also discussed the historic elements that were saved that are still visible. So when you do get to go in, you'll see that there's about 1,100 square feet of wood that was salvaged and repurposed for the check stand area. You'll see the historic trusses where we're mounting the panel and the apple scales, the single wall construction, all those highlight points from the historic assessment that needed to be highlighted. So those are in place. And then we can go to the historic panel, or historic plaque, I believe. All right, so another conditions of approval is to require a historic plaque to be located at the original location of the barn. We tried to assess the best area to where the corner of the barn where it would be, where it was plausible to put it, and that would be over near, next to the Mentone building, the restaurant that's going in on Aptos Village Way in Trout Gulch. We plan to install this on probably a 24 by 14 cement mount and mount it at an angle so people can read in the planner. So we walk by and you see it. We do need, we can get a HD scan of all these photos so they're better quality, and once we get an HD scan of the stencil for that barn, it'll have more detail and the artist can add more etching so it's more detailed. So this is somewhat of a placeholder, but this is the historic information we wanted to convey and let that be there for the rest of the project. who just have questions for.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh.
So,
I just one more point. Because there was so much information, we did in our discussions with Sandy and Annie and Miller Maxfield. We were thinking of potentially doing a fold-out pamphlet at the interior of the store that we could somehow work something out with the Aptos History Museum to where you can take it and be like a walking reader. So because essentially I'm not going to be at the panels every day to discuss what we're thinking, but just to tell that longer story and have that understanding, if as a backup, people can have those, and maybe it's somewhat of a walking tour. We think that would probably be appropriate to really highlight everything in the whole process, and if there's anything that hasn't been conveyed on these panels, because we are limited on the size and what we can do with them. And then also we did want to put a small plaque at the base of the scale, just letting people know that is found in the barn. So thank you.
thank you very much. So I'm going to open this up for any questions or comments from the commissioners on the interpretive panels. Commissioner Jenkins?
Where are the scales going to be again?
If we go to the second slide, I believe. So you went to the apple barn recently. So when you look at the glass, when you're looking in, it'll actually be just to the right up on that wall.
Okay.
So that they have about 4 or 5 check stands. I don't know if you guys see that far. So we have check stands here and here. The window's over here, but straight up. Yeah, sorry, entry's right here. So just, if you're looking at the entry from the inside, it's to the left, but if you're looking at the window, wanting to get in, it's to the right on the opposite side of the wall.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Merriman?
Yeah, just to clear my mind for Watsonville, in the Heen Apple Packing Warehouse one, and we've got some historic experts in the audience here. It says that the apples were destined for Watsonville, known as the apple capital of the state. And I seem to remember hearing it was the apple capital of the world.
Right.
So, which is it? Anyway,
Well, I can probably explain that.
there you go.
Since I come from Watsonville.
That's right.
Well, one thing is capital, I think, usually refers to legislative buildings, and capital
Okay.
not be the right. And Watsonville was actually not known as the Apple Capital.
No?
It was known as Apple City.
Was what?
Apple City.
Oh,
You know that.
That's the apple. I know there's the Apple Annual and all that stuff. but
Say what?
The Apple Annual and everything,
Yeah.
For
No,
those
well, it
few
was,
years.
it was Apple City. I don't,
Apple City.
it was never Apple Capital.
Okay, good to know. The other thing I would love to see on the evolution of the apple barn, and I think all of this is great, is if you have it, more pictures of the actual renovation. I think that's fascinating, just seeing the barn being moved, having that picture. I don't know what you guys have.
Yeah, we do have some. We actually have a time lapse of one of the portions being moved. I don't know how we'd be able to. It'd be cool to have a video, but I'm sure we could probably fit one more photo of the renovation or something.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Are we commenting on the whole thing now?
Yes, I do believe on all 6 panels.
Boy. I have a few comments and questions.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I'm a little hard of hearing and you talk fast.
I'm sorry.
I just might have missed a few things. So, only one interpretive panel is inside, is that correct?
That's right. Per the conditions of approval.
Okay.
One's on the interior.
Okay. And the others are going to be not up on the ramp, but below. So will people be looking down at them, or?
No. So instead of you going up the ramp, is one big L. And they were originally on, 2 here, and then if you went up the ramp, then 3 here. So instead, and then there's the a banister. So instead of being on the ramp, they're just being on the opposite side, but facing out. So you don't have to go up the ramp. You can just be in the village green looking at the barn, and you'll see these panels as well.
Okay, but they're not going to be, they'll be human height?
I'm Maya Chandra, I'm the architect, conservatory, Apple Barn, MBA architect. So when we were at the site, the wire railing that is on the edge of the loading dock is not a historical feature. The loading dock had a killer step, so that the wagons could back up to the dock. But of course, in a modern use, we can't have babies falling off the edge of the dock. So this guard has been added, the wire guard that is between the posts. So since that is an added part of the building, we thought it would be a great idea to put the panels on the wire guard so that we're not covering the actual exhibit, the historic building, with panels. So if you're standing in the courtyard, the panel is going to be right like where that guy's head is. So it'll be perfect viewing for you as a human of normal height to look at the panel.
Well, my concern really is for little kids. I mean, I think that the panels really are, a lot of it is to teach newcomers to the community and children who will be coming through, give them a chance to, put their nose up close to photograph. And if they're way high up, I'm not sure kids are going to be able to appreciate them.
Yeah, they're not way high up. The dock is about it's about a little bit higher than this.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, so they're like here. If this is the top.
And it's like 20-point type is.
They're going to be at least a quarter-inch a letter. Miller Maxfield works with the state parks. So when you see those state parks, it's following that standard, which is the ADA standard. We were conscious that they need to be legible, so we're ensuring that. But I don't think it's too high to deter a kid from moving it.
Okay. I'm also a little concerned about vandalism and any protection that you thought of.
Yes, they're going to come on aluminum panels, and I could be wrong with the term, but I think it's aluminum graphite. But there is a graffiti preventive seal that goes on, and the benefit traditionally there's usually you have your work, and then there'll be some type of glass seal or plexiglass. Those were used a few years ago, but they tend to trap moisture, and you can carve into them.
Yeah.
The benefit of the aluminum graphite is if something does happen to them, you can swap them out, but there will be a graffiti seal over them, and they're meant to be in the sun. I think they have like a 15-20 year lifespan in the sun, and they're really easy to reprint and swap out.
Being on this wire isn't going to deter their longevity if somebody came along and cut the wire or something.
No, I don't believe so. They'll be professionally installed, and I apologize. I should have added a slide to our Miller Maxfield sent like an idea of what they've used before in galleries and.
So it's going to be like museum.
Yes.
Professional.
Yes.
Okay. That's question one. Okay, so is there going to be an explanation on the panels of, you've got on the map, red line, green line.
Mm-hmm.
That red line is red gold and green line is?
Yes, so the intent was the first panel, we wanted to highlight the rivers, those blue lines, the challenges of the topography. The challenges is that's our underlay. And then highlighting those, but I'm sure we can put, I'm not sure if there's text in there. You can see Aptos Creek and Valencia Creek. They are called out. So the intent is to call those out and let people know like the rivers were the barriers, and then F.A. Heen came and provided the tracks. And the next slide shows those tracks that went up to each lumber area. They're small, but they are there. And then the green gold, I believe, are the, I'm not sure what we call it there. Just the roads. But yeah, we could ask our graphics to maybe make them bigger or outline them.
Part of my concern is that it's hard to visualize the size of the panel and its placement, and then photographs with a map. I mean, I think it's wonderful and it's really informative, but for me, I can't see where Aptos Village is very quickly.
Okay, maybe we
I
could
mean,
put
I could figure it because I know, but it would be nice if there was a little triangle or
yeah, that says Aptos
something that
Village.
says Aptos.
Or you are here.
Yeah. Well, not that, but
Like a little legend? A little legend?
a little baby hotel would be good. You know, something.
Okay.
A little barn. And,
Yeah, a little Monopoly barn.
Yeah. Something like that. But and the other is I see that on the railroad version of the map, and then it shows the Apple route, but neither of them identify that as Chalk Gulch Road. That would be good to,
do a current day one, or?
well, just because people who live here are gonna look at that and they're gonna go, where is that now? You know, and what is, you know, so to
Just
say,
as a comparison?
yeah, that's Chalk Gulch Road, you know.
Okay.
Let's say that. Okay, don't want to lose my place. Oh, and you mentioned photographs that were frail and dusty, and I didn't catch what those were.
Oh, no, not the photographs, just the items that we retained, the tins. So over the years, the recycled newspaper tins.
What
yes.
newspaper?
We have I think the Paradise Valley, we have the Valley Press, there's quite a few of them, all whatever existed through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of them are cartoons and ads, like penny saver ads.
Yeah.
But I probably have a stack of them as high as the desk.
No.
But they are, I don't know if they're covered in asbestos, I don't know what they are, so.
Okay, I just heard frail and dusty photographs, and I'm.
Oh no, we try to get the best quality ones that I could dig through for Miller Maxfield to take high quality photos of them to put them on the panel as an example of what was retained. But probably have like 100 of them.
Okay, give me a minute because I have notes.
Jesse, and the labels that were
Yes.
in the building are also being photographed and provided to Aptos Museum, right?
Yes, they are. So we have old canning labels from the 60s and 70s, and they're very brittle. They're very frail. You pick them up and they might tear. So we didn't want to try to press them into the display. Miller Maxfield is going to do a high quality scan and provide them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, that's, those are labels from, you said the 50s and 60s?
I think they're a little younger
They're
than that.
canning labels, or?
I believe so. They're packing labels for oranges, like a citrus. The challenge is that when it was the antique fair, it's hard to distinguish if they were actually from, or I'm sorry, the village fair. But it's hard to distinguish if they're, the historical context, if they were just there as an antique item, or if they were there from
Because
of the
they
industry.
were packing.
But all the labels that I think we found, they're all related to citrus, but we do have them, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna start, see, I think I'm at the beginning. No, but I was looking at this and, I'm right here on page 6, in the evolution of the apple barn. And I guess one of my points is that, and I actually did look this up in the newspaper, it's the Aptos Apple Packing Warehouse. And when Frederick Heen initially authorized the building to be built, he referenced it as the Apple Packing Warehouse. And all references to it that I could find use that. The barn, reference to the barn only shows up in recent history. So if you look up, if you put the words Aptos and barn into a search, what you get is a bus stop. so there are really no historical references to an apple barn. It's the Aptos apple packing warehouse. And so I'm wondering if, I realized that I did notice that on the building it already says apple barn. So if the display and everything pertaining to the apple barn could say Aptos apple packing warehouse, it's Heen apple packing warehouse, because there was more than one apple packing warehouse in Aptos. There was the McDonald apple packing warehouse, which was even larger. So it would be good to differentiate.
Correct that, sure.
So are you requesting that every location on the panels where it mentions Apple Barn be changed to
Yes.
Heen Apple Packing Warehouse, like it does at the top
Okay.
of this panel?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think the first two panels are really complete. And, interesting, and that's another reason I wish there were where people could, stick their nose up and study it. But the one that says red gold, I noticed that a couple of the pictures are pointed off the page. I mean, would they be looking off the panel? Is this fixed? Is this layout?
So I apologize, the PowerPoint might be deceiving, but the square with the blue is, the dark blue is the panel, the background is just background PowerPoint. So.
No, but I mean, where it shows the Chinese working in the Valencia Canyon, it's pointed off the page. Normally, in my experience with like newspaper graphics, you point pictures inside. And so I was just saying, in the bottom one, where the train is, it's actually in Capitola.
Yeah, that's correct, but
Yeah.
it's limited on the historic photos, so yeah.
I know, but it's running off the page. And that sentence also ends with a comma. Not that that's important, but.
So I have a question, Carolyn. So you're just saying that the Chinese men, need to be moved over to the left side so they're facing into the page. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, facing in rather than facing out. It's a small, I get nitpicky.
We were trying to associate the photos with the actual locations that it took place. So,
I
so
can see
that was the intent.
I'm not putting it in concrete. But I think it would be good if you could have them on the inside. The green gold one, is this one complete or is it still?
Regarding pictures or the text?
Everything.
We do, well, we have a certain amount of photos that we can swap out or plug in. We've gotten, it's kind of been a moving target, but the text, I believe we received a fair amount. We had to trim it down to try to fit in all the photos.
So this is solid.
I mean, we can move some things around if
No, I'm just,
the need is there.
I'm just, looking at.
I'm sorry, can I, Jesse, I believe you indicated that the photos without captions, that you're waiting for some captions from John Hipple of the Aptos Museum, is that right?
Yes, we're waiting for some final captions from John and Sandy, and just to reaffirm that we're labeling them correctly.
Okay, I'm concerned more about the text.
Sure.
At this point.
I believe we did receive probably around like 700 characters from Sandy, and we had to trim it down, but we could probably add more in.
Okay. Because to me, this begins to look a little more sketchy, and what else?
What would you like to see there?
Well, more on, it says a rare partnership developed between Lam Pon, Chinese immigrant entrepreneur, and Ralph Madison. And Ralph Madison built the apple dryer in Aptos and leased the building with Mr. Lam, who ran the operation. it's nice to bring them up, and they're extremely important, but it doesn't really say why they're important and how. I mean, I think part of it is to relate the apples to the apple barn and apples to the village of Aptos. And, you know, I guess what I'd like to see it come across is a relationship between the apple barn and all of Aptos Village and all of the apple processing activity that took place in Aptos Village that made Aptos sort of an apple center. So I don't see anything in here that mentions the McDonald apple dryer. Or there were 2 apple dryers in Aptos and 2 packing sheds and a vinegar works. And there might have even been, no, Stan could answer, was there a heat and vinegar works? No. No? Okay, well then that doesn't count. But
So kind of that the apple barn is the center, and from there radiated these other businesses and...
the apple barn wasn't at the center. It was part of the Village of Aptos industrial area. And that industry was all apples at one point. I mean, the whole central part of Aptos Village was dedicated to the processing and packing and canning and everything related to apples. And that's not a strong, that's not coming through for me in this. And the relationship, to mention Lampon and not say why it was important, and the other people, the Chinese that worked in Aptos, in the apple dryer,
So would it
it's
be,
not tied together.
would it be possible to move the 2 right-handed photos up a bit and expand the text?
I would hope that there could be more text.
Sure.
Wait a minute.
Do you have a TBD on when these were to be mounted?
Well, once
I
they're
realize as soon as possible.
yeah, well, once they're approved and finalized, the turnaround, the manufacturing turnaround takes probably like 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more. We do want to try to get it buttoned up as soon as possible, just because HRC meets every 3 months. So the next approval wouldn't have been till July, which is challenging. But as far as the turnaround and edits, take us a couple weeks.
So there's no other text that could be added to this.
No, absolutely. We could absolutely add text.
We could take it and work
Yeah, no,
some more.
we're open to all edits and addressing them.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, we would like to address them as soon as possible, that's all. And then move towards an installation date, but we appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, I know that the writing focuses on the barn and the significance of the barn, but I do think that some other history of Aptos needs to be told as well in order for people to understand why the barn is important. And so, for example, for me, Valencia, the relationship with Valencia is exceedingly important because Frederick Heen, that was a Heen town, basically. It was established by Frederick Heen, the lumber industry, and then it became an apple growing community. And the apples, the farmers all used and relied on the Valencia Hall, which was the Heen built hall, to coordinate their activities. And that building is on the National Register. So you have a National Register building related to apples and apple packing in Valencia, and you have one that's eligible, the barn in Aptos. And I'm not sure that the relationship between the two comes across, except for the photograph of that's Fred Grohl on the wagon there with the apple boxes. And he was the president of the Tri-County Grange. So, and that picture was taken on Flume Road, right there in Valencia. So I think Valencia is a big part of the picture. And the apples came from Valencia, and then ultimately the barn becomes, is it the Valencia Fruit Company, I think. Anyway, this text is, I think in the first two panels it's very complete, and when you get to green gold, it's not so complete. And then in the Heen apple packing warehouse section, it looks unfinished. I looked at the Heen apple packing warehouse, apple barn. I counted the word apple 15 times in 4 paragraphs. It seemed to me that the editing isn't really complete, and this part could use revision. And there's so much that could be said about Frederick Heen. I mean, he can't be minimized into a paragraph. As they say, it's difficult to sum up the life of Frederick Augustus. He was enormously important to all of Santa Cruz County, and in particular to Aptos. So to bring Heen down to basically a photo and a paragraph isn't really, I don't know, it's, for me, what's important about the interpretive panels is that they, in my mind, and this is just my impression, would explain to people who are going to move to Aptos, who are going to be coming into the community and be interested in the history, that these panels would be explaining partly what is here and what's been saved and preserved, but also explains what's changed and what has been lost. And in reality, I think the community of Aptos feels that, to some extent, that it's had a heart transplant. And when you have a heart transplant, the old heart has to stop beating, and you put a new one in. And I think that's the panels are going to maybe help heal that operation. You've taken something away, and you're inserting something new. And so people coming into the community want to understand, why did you save this barn? Why is it important to the community of Aptos? And something about the character of Aptos, because in the research I was doing, I came across a quote from a man named Spencer, who came to Aptos in the 1860s, his family did. And his description of Aptos community was a community of fierce community spirit. And fierce community spirit seems to me to really fit well with Aptos, or description of Aptos. So I would like to, we need a little of that fierce community spirit was in here, and could help explain all the changes that are occurring. And so I guess what my take on this is, as I get further along in the reading, it starts off really strong, it grabs you, it's got Aptos, and then stuff is happening, and then it sort of just loses energy, and you get to the Aptos emerges 1900 to the present. The first sentence says, Aptos village declined to the first half of the 20th century. And I would argue that. I could probably argue that a lot. But it's true. As industrial businesses closed and the highway was relocated, to keep the town alive, Jim Toney purchased the Bayview Hotel and the Apple Barn. Well, his name is Fred, for one thing. And in the research that I did, in the Bayview Hotel primary record form, there's this wonderful, and I have it here somewhere in all of this stuff, wonderful, there's an article that was submitted by Pat Toney on her parents, and it's in the Village Fair in description, DPR. And it talked about how her parents, both of them, families go back to pioneer days, met and worked side by side as children in that apple packing shed. Here's old Fred Toney. And then he grows up and he becomes a plumber and an electrician, and he learns other skills during the war. And so he's a man who's good with his hands and tools, and he likes to work outdoors, and he likes to work with stuff. He doesn't like being behind the desk. And he buys, in 1944, the Bayview Hotel and the apple packing shed. I think he's got like 1,600 acres altogether. I could be wrong. Anyway, he's the guy who decides, A, to move the Bayview Hotel and save it. And he and his wife run it as a hotel, and they serve food. And then they look at this vacant apple packing shed, and they decide to do something with it. And the reason it survived is because Fred got in there with his tools and his knowledge of electricity and his ability to turn that building into another business, repurpose it, as it was put. So here you have two people who really saved both of those buildings and added tremendously. And they were a little focused on old-fashioned days stuff. And they were the ones who were, really good friends with Lucille Aldrich, and then they laid down in front of the railroad track and they got the Aptos parade going, and that has been the symbol of old Aptos. That, and so I think, I'm sorry I'm so long-winded, that Fred and Babe Toney deserve space no matter what it takes to give it to them. And another person is Paul Johnson, because this is requiring Paul Johnson or requesting Paul Johnson photographs, but nothing is said about Paul. And Paul Johnson is the man who worked in the apple packing sheds, who could build an apple box with 28 nails in a half a minute. That's 120 apple boxes an hour. So this is it. That is just great history that should be in here. I hope it gets in here. So, the last page. Haven't got it. Okay. This one, the last page looks to me like a checklist, where you say, okay, I need to have this, check, check. And so then the Aptos Village plan is a timeline, and to me there's no quicker way to put someone to sleep than to show them a timeline on a panel. But I'm just wondering how important that is to have the history of the Aptos Village plan in there, because it's done. It's been done, and it is what it is. It's finished. And we have, and I don't know. I love the pictures of the barn being moved, and all those little pictures in here. I'm beginning to think I'm seeing that one photograph from 1915 a little too much. And then they talk about historically buildings being moved. Yet, we know that if you move a building, then it lessens its historic integrity. So, I don't know if that's pertinent. But how it was moved, I think this description, when you get to that paragraph, the Heen Apple Barn was relocated in 2016 by Kelly Brothers, that is really good. And from then on, it just kind of zings until you get to rehabilitation, and then it looks like something was lifted right out of the Secretary of Interior standards and plugged in there. And then the interior features, it looks like they're on complete sentences. You get down to construction with timber structure system, posts, beams, and trusses. And I don't know if that's not important or not, but it would be nice to have complete sentences if possible. So I guess what I'm saying is that this looks like it needs some more revision. But otherwise, it's really good. I mean, the first part is spectacular.
Well, my comment with not having the history, knowing the history like Carolyn does, really not having a really big grasp of Aptos history, to me it was kind of interesting seeing the history of the village plan. I had no idea it had been around for so many years. And again, you know, identifying the things that were kept, that was able to be saved and kept. If I were to go in there, I would then be looking for those things around inside. Now, I don't know if there's a better way to have that information, or whether maybe take that out and put it into the pamphlet where you'll be able to put in more information so someone could hold that pamphlet inside the store and be looking at those things. You know, that might be another option to do a bit of reformatting and saying some of this we can put into and elaborate in a pamphlet they can get. Because I imagine grocery shopping, a lot of people are going in, they're on a timeline, have other things to do, but grabbing it and reading it and knowing they're coming back, you know, and having that to really take a closer look and with that realization. What is the dimensions of the panels?
3 by 6.
3 feet by 6 feet?
Panels 1 through 5 are
The panels 1 through 5 are 30 by 42.
30 by 42, and then panel 6, the big one, that's inside is 8 feet by 3 feet high.
I'm sorry, you said that it was, what was it?
36 by, so the panels 1 through 5, each one will be 36 inches by 40 inches.
Oh, not 30 by 42?
No, sorry, I'm sorry. They are 36 inches wide and 30 inches high. So approximately the same size as the drawing, which we don't have.
So that's 1 through 5.
Yes.
36 wide by 30 inches high.
Correct.
All right, and then number 6?
Is 8 feet wide, 3 feet high.
And that's the one on the evolution of the apple barn.
Yes, that would be on the interior wall past the check stands.
Do any of the other commissioners have any comments? Oh,
Sorry, that was me. Just
Oh.
when you have a moment, I'd like to just make a few comments as well.
okay, so,
I was also wondering, since we have some experts in the audience, if they would want to say anything.
Oh, definitely, yes. I just, regarding, I appreciate all of your extensive comments, Carol, and I'm thinking I want to maybe give the applicant, just so if he's clear on kind of what you're looking, what you'd like to see, especially for panel 6. I think, and I had some, what I wanted to see in this panel, I gave some guidance to the applicant, was to make sure that people know like how the building's been transformed and sort of what's original and what's been retained, so they have some understanding of that. So I understand what you're saying, maybe we don't need the history of Aptos Village. I just wasn't sure, aside from my complete sentence, if there's something different you wanted to see in the panel, aside, and I know, you know, more photos you suggested, but I think would help liven it up, but I wasn't sure what, you know, if you were more specific about what you thought was missing or should be included.
Well, Actually, I like, this seemed more technical to me than people friendly, you know, like reader friendly. It's more of a, you know, I can't even read it. The active or process of making a compatible use for a property through repair alterations. I mean, that's kind of a planning jargon paragraph, and I don't know how to make it more, because I don't know, the whole barn relocation story to me is fascinating, and to, you know, I remember the people early on talking about going into the heat building, and I mean, going into the packing shed and looking at it and seeing how it was built, and you know, because we were trying to say it was built by a master architect in this case, and no, it wasn't. He knew for one look that, you know, it wasn't built by a master architect. So, you know, there's some parts of the story I think could be livened, you know, bring it to life a little bit. And
I think maybe the rehab section, it sounds like planning findings or something.
It is taken from the secondary standards, and I get your point that it's not,
Necessary.
yeah.
Put more history and pictures in it.
yeah, or pictures of people moving things, and, you know, just liven it up a little bit. And well, you know, about the rest of it, you know, was really hoping it would come back so we could see it again when it was finished, because it doesn't look like it is, you know.
From your end, what is your process to make any changes at this point?
So I discussed with Annie that potentially we could give the HRC maybe a week to have written comments on these, and then we take those back, revise the panels. Revising them essentially it's challenging. You know, as I've said, we have a lot of photos, so it's pulling and picking which ones fit. And in all these photos, we have to retain them and then get HD scans of them in order to print these. These are essentially placeholders. So we really want to finalize what will be on those panels before we move forward for that next step of manufacturing. But as far as the approval process and taking that feedback, we appreciate your notes, and then we implement them. We work with Sandy, we work with Miller Maxfield and MBA, and incorporate those. And
So,
And I did,
1 month?
as far, sorry.
I did have a suggestion, which would be a way for commission input, is to form a subcommittee, to work with planning staff on finalizing the designs, because I don't think we're going to be able to hold everything up and defer issuing the final certificate of occupancy until July. So that could be one way to help the project move forward, to be a subcommittee. And I don't know that, I think a week for the subcommittee, if you decide to do that, to get the final comments to the applicant. And once that is integrated, there probably could be another opportunity for the subcommittee to look at the final design, but it would have to move pretty quickly so that we can get this finalized.
So basically, you're saying that this is the final.
Well, based on your feedback, we adjust and try to tell more story.
I think they were hoping this was the final, and
It would be a final draft, and then we take our edits and
Well,
adjust those.
Okay, I would say then that some pretty heavy revision needs to take place on the last pages. The first couple worked really well, and then the third one's good too. But even basic grammar, there's some things that appear capitalized that, you know, maybe have somebody edit, but proofreading. And I really, there's a whole lot, and I really think a lot more detail should go into the last part.
well then,
And I'm open to the idea of
subcommittee?
subcommittee. Sounds good. I'm going
Okay.
away with myself.
When are you leaving?
May 7th.
Okay, so that's what, next Monday? Yeah, something like that. So we would need another person to work with Sandy through the, I guess, this weekend. Is there any other commissioner available? Because I'm gone.
I'm going too.
So.
I think you can't have a subcommittee of one as
Of
far as I
one?
know.
Makes it easier.
Since you've already got most of your notes there, is it possible for a commissioner to work with a non-commission person? Or not?
I mean, they can certainly, I know that the applicants would continue to work with Sandy Lyden as well as others on the, so, you know, there's probably opportunity, you know, based on the applicant for further input, but the subcommittee should just be members of the HRC.
Okay, I was thinking of a commissioner working with an expert, you know, together kind of thing.
And what you're thinking of is having written comments by,
But it would need to be by,
What's the 5th? Is Monday the 5th?
I think the 5th is Friday, Saturday?
No, the 6th or the 7th?
So by next Monday, would you be able to put to?
I don't know, because, I mean, I have things on my schedule for the weekend, so it'd be very difficult to do.
Annie, are you recording the,
Yes, this meeting is being
would it be
recorded.
possible for planning department to parse the comments from the recording and send them to the applicant?
Yes, I can do that, and I can CC Carolyn on the comments.
Would that
You
be
know,
applicant,
if I
Carolyn?
could, you know, if I could confer with the person who's working on this and give that person my feedback. And
It's a sort of a team effort, so I would hate to have you do that multiple times with multiple people.
well, I'm just thinking that I could give it to Sandy. I could give him comments.
Yeah, that works fine for us. I just really want to reiterate and ensure that the HRC is all on the same page, because it just, as just point, you know, Commissioner Phillips liked, you know, panel 6, and Commissioner Swift felt that it needed more. So we really appreciate direction, especially on panel 5, because there is so much information regarding Fred Tony and others. So again, we were trying to meet the conditions of approval, and yes, it is a checkbox. It is a list. There's a way we can convey it where it tells a story. But wherever those areas are lacking, I really appreciate direction so we understand, so we don't keep coming back and putting a Band-Aid on everything. And then,
Right.
so I just want to ensure that we all have a collective vision if we are going to get direction from you, from Sandy, and from the HRC.
Is this brochure that you mentioned, is that a absolute certainty that it will be produced and available, or is it an idea that maybe we can do this and it's something maybe down the road?
It's not finalized. The reason why we brought that up is because there's so much history to tell that there's not enough room on these panels for that. So if we do want to have, you know, a paragraph for F.A. Heen, if we do want to have a paragraph for Fred Tony, or a whole page, the pamphlet would be appropriate. We could have the career highlights, the lifetime highlights on those panels, perhaps, but the whole story, it turns the interpretive display from pictures and a map and kind of telling a story and a theme to a reading. So I think that's when our first attempt to this was, there were just text and bullet points, and, you know, we got feedback and it wasn't telling the story. So I think we need to find a good balance.
And that would be my comment on the page 6, that the history of the Aptos Village Plan definitely, I think, could go into a brochure. It would need to be on the interpretive panels, and then that would open that up. And
To me, the interpretive panels seem like real precious space, you know, that we put in the gems of the history.
yeah, I can definitely see that as a big point. of coming to that market. Because you're not just doing a chore or an errand, you're also being able to take your children, you're able to learn about the history that is in your backyard that you live with every day. And, you know, and you've got that green area where the kids can play, and, you know, it's more than just running in, doing the grocery list, all right, get back in the car, now we're on to our next errand kind of thing.
I'm trying to think of how this can work.
Well, do we want to open it up to
So-
comments?
Well, I'm just thinking, if I was a subcommittee and I had till next Monday to provide my thoughts about this, I could probably do that.
Do the commissioners have any other comments before we open up the?
But then my last question is, if we do that, would we get to see it again? Or it would just sort of,
Yeah, I think we could send it to you guys internally, and you know, if you give a thumbs up or not, or
Okay.
maybe a few more tweaks.
I would feel very comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
No?
the commission, under the Brown Act, the commission is required to take any action in the context of a open public meeting. So, you know, anyone who want to be on the subcommittee, you know, they can look at it again. The subcommittee is not required to, you know, have this process, but for the commission to take an action, it needs to be done in the context of it.
So if everyone wants to see it.
Let me
I'll
just,
be on
Annie, and I guess the commissioners, this is worth us maybe having a special meeting, say in a month from now or 6 weeks from now or something like that. I don't know about,
You know, the other concern is that, you know, the commission, under the condition of approval, commission isn't required to provide comments or take an action, so I hate to hold up the whole project for it to return to the commission again.
that's true. This does not require our approval. It requires our comments to you. And I know you want to satisfy our comments because we are the historic resource, and you want it to be as accurate and as complete as possible as you can
Right.
on the signs.
I'd like to say, I think I agree. I thank you for coming and sharing the draft panels for us to review. I'm very comfortable having Carolyn work with you and review some maybe modified language, some changes, but I'm comfortable letting you take it from there
Thank you.
and then seeing it up in the building.
And of course, staff is here to make sure your comments are addressed appropriately in the final version, so.
Commissioner Alvera, do you have any additional comments?
No, I don't know too much about Aptos, so I'd rather not say anything.
Commissioner Jenkins, any comments?
No, I agree with what Commissioner Merriam said. I could go along with that too, perfectly.
Okay, so at this point, it looks like you will be a subcommittee of one. You will write up the comments
I'm not sure what this means, but. okay.
and notes, and you will send them to,
You could send it to Annie, and I think Annie could distribute it.
okay, so Annie will be the point of contact here. So you will
If that works for Annie, so.
send it to Annie, and Annie will send it to you. And then hopefully at some time, because it sounds like the turnaround is a matter of a few weeks, you will end up being able to look at it again.
Yeah, I'm going to be gone from May 7th to the 21st.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll be back.
But then, but you can also send them back to Annie for her to review as part of the staff, and she will have a copy of all the comments.
Yes, I mean, ultimately, this is staff approval, so if Carolyn's gone, I can't promise another opportunity to review depending on the turnaround, because we are holding up issuing the final certificate of occupancy for this, so
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's fair to try to let you see it once we clean it up. I'll see what we can do.
That'd be great.
So if there's nothing else, before we move on, public comments?
I wanted you to invite some of the audience to speak.
Right, we're opening it up now to public comments. And Commissioner Merriman is having to leave us now.
My name is Stanley Stevens, librarian from UCSC, and I have been studying the Frederick Heen and the Charles Younger families for about 40 years. And in 1977, thereabouts, the widow of Donald Younger gave to the University Library a treasure trove of Heen records, among which were 5 letter books. I'll refer first of all to letter book number 73, which covers the 1906 period of time, just really a few months during 1906, during which the Heen Company had the apple packing warehouse in Aptos built. I have in front of me a photocopy of the 1908 Sanborn fire insurance map, which I have 2 sheets. One is the full sheet of the entire map, 1908, and then an inset, a blow-up of the portion that shows the Apple warehouses. And the label created by the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company reads Heen Company's Apple Warehouses. The houses is abbreviated, as well as a couple of other items. I'm going to submit this for your consideration so that you'll have it for reference. If I could briefly refer to the 1906 letter book, this is for outgoing correspondence of the Heen Company. We don't have anything related to the incoming correspondence. Although there is an indication that the apples out of the apple packing warehouses in Aptos went as far east to Bombay, India, and as far in the other direction to England and London. So there's a tremendous worldwide distribution of apples out of the Aptos packing warehouses. The point I would like to make, I believe Commissioner Swift, I'm not sure if it was a motion before you or a suggestion, is related to the use of the term or comparison apple warehouse, or are you talking about an apple barn? On one of the panels, I believe it's labeled apple barn, maybe more than one panel. I urge that it be consistent throughout all of the panels and the brochure and the use Apple warehouse, Apple packing warehouse would be much more historically accurate. I believe that the use of Apple barn is a much more modern term that does not relate to the period of time in which the warehouses were constructed or in use. So that was my presentation. I'll submit this Sanborn map for the record.
Thank you very much. And I apologize, I was remiss at the beginning of our meeting to state that for public comments, the limit is 3 minutes, and that's what those lights are for. So at 2 minutes, the yellow light goes on, and then at the end of the 3 minutes, the red light will go on. And that allows us to keep the meeting moving and allow everyone who wants to make their comments will have the time to do so. Thank you. Another public comment?
Well, 2 minutes.
I got 3.
No, 3. My name is Sandy Lyden. I've been working on this for a long time, and I just want to say that this process has very much enlivened the historical community in Aptos. We're churning up a lot of stuff, and that Barry Swenson Builders and Jesse, their representative, has been very forthcoming and available to help us do that. So some of the time delays have been my responsibility because, as I told Jesse, knowing a lot about Aptos can be a curse in a process like this. So they've been very patient, and I appreciate it, and I am committed to seeing through the next week or month or whatever it takes to see that we get this thing buttoned up and finished. And I thank Jesse for his patience. And also Annie Murphy, who has had to endure this whole thing at a distance as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
You want to reset the clock? Please. I'd like 3 minutes instead of 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Of course, I was waiting till you started to speak.
Oh, thank you.
Full time.
Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I'm a resident of rural Aptos, and I think what you're seeing here today is the fierce community spirit that Aptos is known for. And Commissioner Swift, I really want to thank you for your diligence and your good comments here today. I appreciate it very much. I think that, as Ms. Murphy said, the certificate of final occupancy is being held up. And if you look at attachment C in your packet, under number 10, it says the interpretive displays, installation of the interpretive display shall be required prior to final occupancy certificate. And the next page, installation of interpretive display shall be required prior to issuance of the final occupancy certificate. The New Leaf Market opens day after tomorrow. And so I think your body has the responsibility to issue some sort of a legal thing here, because this is in the conditions of approval for the project. And I don't want to see this rushed just to meet this sentence so that New Leaf can open. I want it done well, because as Commissioner Swift has brought forward today, this is a golden opportunity. And we don't want to rush through it. We want it to be really a tribute to both the preservation efforts that Barry Swenson Builder has done. They could have demoed it if they really wanted to make the case. But thankfully, they did not. And even though it's been moved, and I'm not sure if it still holds its NR3 status with all of the changes, it's there, and this is a moment that we can take to really make it shine and be a great educational resource for the future generations. I think that the plaque of where the building was is not at the restaurant. I think it's more in line with where the Mid-County Safety Center is destined to be. So, but I am glad there will be some recognition of that. I also, I'm very grateful for the amount of preservation. I would like to see the list of materials that are also supposed to be submitted. I wonder what happened to the great little soda counter that was inside the antique barn that had been in George Howell's pharmacy and soda fountain for years and years. What happened to that? And can't that be put in new leaf if it's still around? What happened to is the barn wood still going to be put in the wine sales area as the HPP amended? Could I have a little more time, please? 1 minute.
Sure.
Thank you very much. The amended HPP designated some of the used barn wood to be also put in the wine sales area, and I want to know if that has happened. In the interpretive panel, I'm very happy to see a nod to the Native American presence there, and glad that Linda Yamani has been involved. And I'm happy also that there's a nod to the Asian, the Chinese people that were so integral in the community, and the amazing relationship between Madison and Lampon. That actually could be pointed out in the phase 2 of the Aptos Village project, whose final map has yet to be approved. The location of the dryer and vinegar works is in the phase 2. And I think that's something that should be really discussed here. I think also, and again, Commissioner Swift, thank you for tying in the whole bigger picture of Valencia. There was a character that I have heard many people that knew named Indian Jim that walked around the Valencia places and you know, we should, was really the last remaining Ohlone in the area. There must be photos of him. And he was also instrumental in the Valencia and the Day Valley area. And finally, there's no picture of Lucille Aldrich in here, but yet the big 3-story new building next to the apple barn is called the Aldrich Building. So I think that we really need to take some time here to do an excellent job of this interpretation, and certainly give Lucille Aldrich and Anne and Humbert Isaacs some of the credit that they're due, and really make this an excellent thing that will go into the future. Thank you very much. Thank you for the extra time, I appreciate it.
And I just want to thank our 3 speakers. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for any length at all, but and I am not a lawyer, but I believe that the word shall actually legalistically can also be interpreted as the word may. So that might help with the process of issuing the occupancy permit.
I want to thank all of our public speakers. We greatly appreciate your comments and interest in this project. Absolutely.
We didn't talk about the Aptos Firehouse. Is that here, or is that another separate?
That's the next item on the agenda.
I should read the agenda.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes,
Sure.
no, I was.
I just wanted to make a point of clarification, if I may, about the certificate of occupancy.
Yes, please.
So there's a temporary certificate of occupancy and a final certificate of occupancy. And the temporary certificate of occupancy can be issued once all sort of health and safety issues with the permit are final. So that has been issued for the apple barn, and that is what is allowing it to reopen. But the final certificate of occupancy addresses all the aspects of the permit, including the interpretive display, and that will not be issued until the signage has been installed. So that's the difference there.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman? Chair lady, or chair, okay. I think there's a gentleman over there who wants to speak, and he had his hand up.
Oh, I was just going to clarify what Annie just clarified regarding the TCO versus the CO. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I was trying to find where the firehouse is mentioned, and I thought I saw in the draft agenda, it was on here, and now I'm not finding it. Is it included in with the application?
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, I may have accidentally distributed to you this morning the previous agenda that did not include the Aptos Firehouse. It was added, the proposal was made available at a late time, so I was able to add it to the agenda, so I apologize for that. The agenda that came in your packet is the correct agenda.
Oh, okay, so we're not talking about the firehouse at
No,
this
so
time?
we are. The firehouse is item 8C on the agenda.
Oh, this one here. Very good.
So are we changing topics now?
Yes, we're,
I would like to suggest a brief break.
I also we could do a break. I would also like a motion from your commission on the Aptos signage too before we close that.
Certainly.
We could certainly take a break and come back to that if your commission desires.
all right, so we have a motion to, so help me here, Annie.
Okay.
So,
Let's see, motion to form a subcommittee with Commissioner Swift to provide written comments on the proposal for the Aptos interpretive display within 1 week to planning staff.
who will then distribute it to the appropriate
applicant.
parties?
Yes, to the applicant for final.
You know, this seems like it's just creating more work. I mean, it doesn't feel like this is going to be helpful. If you've got Sandy working on it, he's going to know how to put it all together. So I'm not that concerned about having a list of things given to you that you can give to them that they can then, I just don't know that that's necessary.
Okay. So let me ask the question then. So Sandy and Sandy, you're still working with them on these panels, or is your work done?
No, I'm planning, I just dumped, gave,
Do you want to go to the microphone?
yeah, I just sent, actually not long ago,
Yeah, last night.
yeah, middle of the night, my thinking on panels 5 and 6, no, 4 and 5. And they'd already gotten 3. So I think, given Commissioner Swift's comments and the fact that I was here and I was taking notes, and I know that Jesse was as well, I think if the commission feels comfortable, I think we can move forward without putting that extra step. I don't want to speak for the commissioner, Commissioner Swift, but we can move this along smartly, really quickly.
So the two of you would continue working together with the feedback that you've received to keep finessing and refining the interpretive displays?
Does that feel comfortable for you?
It does, but as I said earlier, I just want to ensure that we're going the right path. Just like panel 5, it's kind of a toss-up, right? We got a comment that there are no photos of the Tuesday evening ladies. I know it's not the right term, but and Lucille Aldridge, but then there's also Fred Tony. So we have this whole contemporary slide that is a moving target. And I'm happy to move forward with Sandy and take everyone's comments. I just want to make sure we're going in the right direction because I don't want to revise them and then come back and not be what the HRC envisions. That's all.
You know, my feeling is that if you heard, and I believe you really heard what the emphasis I was making, that Sandy's probably going to touch on Fred Tony as much as he needs to be touched on, and those other topics. If he was, he's aware of history work.
He's been a great help. So I think if we can finalize everything, I think it'll be everything the community wants. So.
Yeah, no, I think I'm comfortable with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We're desperate. If anybody here has a photograph of Fred Tony or Fred and Babe together, bring it.
Or even if you know what they look like.
Wouldn't Gail Costello, she lives just
We
down
would
the
think,
road.
she's on my list. So
All right, well then, do we still need a motion then, since there is no subcommittee? Doesn't seem like it.
No, I think we have, received your comments. I can also, since the meeting's being recorded, I can also make sure that the applicant has the recorded comments as well, and I think they can move forward.
I think my intent isn't to complicate things more.
Okay, and that way you'll have from Annie a written list of Carolyn's comments, so you can be sure that you have received everything. All right, then we are moving on to 8C, unless there's any other comments on... Oh, well, I'm sorry. We will adjourn for 10 minutes and take a break and convene back here at 11:35. Okay, we're calling the April 29th, 2019 meeting of the Santa Cruz County Historic Resources Commission back to order at 7:36. And we are now under new business, agenda item 8.C. Review proposal for the interpretive display for the former Aptos Firehouse in Aptos Village. And Annie, you're going to give the presentation?
I just have a few comments, and then Maya Chandra with Marvin Bamberg Associates will be reviewing the proposed design for the panel.
Thank you.
So the conditions of approval for the application for demolition of the Aptos Firehouse is approved by your commission, includes a requirement for an interpretive display. The conditions require that one or more interpretive displays be installed on the property that provide information to the public regarding the history of the firehouse in the context of the history and development of Aptos Village. The panel should include photographs of the building as it existed before demolition, historic photos documenting the use of the building as a firehouse, VFW hall, and other uses. It should be located near the location of the firehouse building or included as part of the larger interpretive display for the apple barn, and should be installed outdoors in a highly visible area. As for the apple barn signage, the minimum font size would be 1/4 inch. And staff has completed an initial review of the proposal and found it largely to comply with the condition of approval, as it provides a detailed history of the firehouse since its construction, with photographs and text documenting the changes, uses of the building within the context of Aptos history. Although the review of this proposal, as was the case for the apple barn, is not required for your commission. We are providing your commission an opportunity to review and comment on the proposal prior to final review and approval by staff, and we certainly appreciate your insight. Staff has been reviewing the proposal for compliance with the condition of approval and has found it largely to comply. as well as review of the entire project for compliance with conditions of approval. The approved building permit for Building 14 in the location of the former firehouse includes the landscape plan as reviewed by your commission in 2016. And a member of the public pointed out that there may be a fence installed there, so staff has informed the property owner that they were required to install the landscaping as shown on the approved building permit. Just wanted to note that to your commission. So now Maya Gendreau, architect with Harvard Bamberg and Associates, will provide a review of this design.
Hello, Commission. Thank you for taking your time to review the firehouse proposed display panel. So the text of the panel was acquired from local historian John Hibble, as well as several of the photographs. And I think, Carolyn, you may have given him some input as well. The panel is proposed to be 40 inches square and to be mounted in a weatherproof vented aluminum display box on the side of Building 14. So Annie, if you can advance. So this is an elevation of the side that faces the new street that Barry Swinton is putting in. And you can see there are several windows. And then on the corner of the building, it says panel location, which is the box. And then if you proceed to the map photograph, so that Building 14 is the building that sits on the south side of the new driveway that points into the Aptos Village Square. And so the panel will be located facing that street. The front of the building is mostly windows, so there is not space to locate the panel on the front of the building. And then, of course,
Excuse me, what is going to be going into this building?
I believe it's offices.
An office building?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Apartments on the top,
What apartments on top of this?
residential on top.
One of the tenants is Cat and Cloud Coffee, and I'm not sure who the other tenant is, but one of the tenants is a coffee shop.
Coffee shop. And then I have another picture that shows a similar location. This is actually in Willow Glen in San Jose, this is what the display looks like installed. And if you have any comments or would like to comment on the contents of the panel, please feel free.
I have some comments, but I wanted to ask a question. Something Annie said about, you said something about landscaping. What are you talking about? I didn't catch it, Mike.
Yes, Becky Steinbruder provided some correspondence, which is included in your packet, stating that a fence had been installed between Building 14, which is the former location of the firehouse, and the Bayview Hotel. And your commission, as one of the conditions of approval for the demolition of the firehouse, your commission included a condition that they install landscaping between the two buildings to sort of soften the impact of the adjacent building.
Yeah,
So,
I remember that.
yeah, and we did provide your commission the landscape plans to review and comment. It wasn't an approval required, but we provided them to you to review and comment. And the landscape plans were included as part of the building permit, so they were approved and included the building permit. So I haven't actually had a chance to go out to the site to see if there's a fence there, but we have.
Well, there's a fence.
Okay, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but I did inform the property owner that they're required to install landscaping, and we'll look into it further, but I don't know what happened there.
Well, I seem to remember some discussion of trees. Do you remember? That they were going to put some trees up that blend it all together. And you can't, I mean, I looked at the distance between the fence and
Not very much.
the building is like this. And you couldn't get a tree in there. Maybe some nasturtiums or something could grow.
Yeah, they were going to do a espalier shrub called lavender starflower that was going to be installed, and that can grow fairly tall and provide a buffer. I don't think that the fence was part of the original landscape approval though, so.
Because it looks stark. You know, it looks
Right.
There's a little tiny tree there, I suppose will grow bigger, but
Yeah,
it's
so.
sort of abrupt.
Right, so they are required to comply with the approved plan, so I don't know how that fence ended up being installed, but we're looking into it, but they are required to comply with their condition of approval.
Okay. Can I comment on the firehouse? This text, I did work with John and found out we were looking for when this building was really built. And so it was, of course you get very excited over finding things like that, and then it turns out to be, it's old history already. But my thought on this was this looks like it just took what John wrote and put it in here, and it probably could be, the text could be reduced in size, and I think that would probably, because what you really want to say about the building isn't the fact that there were errors made in the previous understanding. I don't know if that makes sense, but previously people thought that the firehouse had one history, and it turns out that it had a different history. So John is referencing in the beginning one of the histories, and I'm thinking, if you went through this and boiled it down, you would have room for larger pictures. And I think the oldest pictures are the most interesting. And I don't know that you really need a picture of it as a produce stand and that of when it just before it was torn down. It would be neat to have the other ones. And also, yes, there's a sentence in here that says, where's the American Legion? Okay, November 1953, the American Legion Post 778 moved into the former firehouse and remodeled the building. The front of the firehouse was shortened and given a false front. So it had an Old West look. But if you look at the picture in the middle on the right, you see that it has the false front when the Aptos Fire Department is still there. And it says Aptos Fire Department on it. So something needs to be corrected there. Does that make sense? Okay.
That's all.
Is this history complete enough?
It's really complete.
It is?
Yeah.
That what's here on the panel?
Yeah.
Okay, so there isn't any reason to elaborate or?
No.
Okay.
No. This is more than anyone would ever really be interested in.
Okay.
But I just think it could be, there's a lot in here that probably, if you think of, I always think back that here's somebody that's not familiar with Aptos, they're coming in, they're going to look at this panel, and they're interested in knowing about, oh, what's that? What's that funny building? And so reading about it, you just want to give them enough that they get an idea, but then they see these really cool pictures that go with it, like the tower and the first fire engine, and some pictures of it next to the Bayview. I think that's really interesting. So that's what I'm just saying. More pictures, less text.
Okay, is there any other comments? Commissioner Jenkins?
No, it's interesting.
Commissioner Alberta, any comments on the interpretive panel?
No.
Okay. I don't have any questions either.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Certainly.
We searched extensively at special collections and MAH and did not find other photographs of the firehouse. Do you know if any exist?
Built, you mean?
Any photos
Any
of
more
older
interesting
buildings
old
that
photos
may be in a private collection or
that you know
After
that
your
There's none that I know of.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Carolyn did forward me a great photo of a fire truck. I guess you said it was the first Aptos History Day parade. So if we wanted to delete the photo before it was taken down, maybe we could add that photo to
Well, the cool thing about it is that it was in 1929 they opened the bridge coming into Aptos, and they had a parade, people dressed up, and it says here it's a Paul Johnson picture, and it shows people sitting in the fire truck, and it's about to go under the bridge, across the bridge, and so it's an active photo. It's got people in it. People are standing on the sidelines, and they're all kind of interested. So this picture's good. The other one is just better. You know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comments?
Thank you. Becky Steinbrenner, resident of rural Aptos. I find this panel very, very busy, really hard to interpret at all. I think it's just too busy. And I wonder if the size of print is also very small. I think the condition for the interpretive panels for the barn, the warehouse, is a 1/4 inch so that people can read it. So I would like to extend that requirement also. And also point out that the photo in the lower right there of the building being demolished occurred, just to point out to you, before the demolition permit was even issued. I remember that day, and I know what that looked like. So I really don't want to see that there. The issue of the landscaping, I think, is quite significant, that it is a condition of approval, and that the property owner has not upheld the condition of approval. I'm a gardener, and I really appreciate the significance of plantings and what their intentions and values are. And the building number 14 was to have had an espalier, grewia, caphras, lavender starflower, with a number of other plantings, which I questioned at the time, having ceanothus and some of the sun-loving plants in an area that gets significant shade. But something needs to go there other than the 8-foot-high fence that has been installed. So, Ms. Murphy, I appreciate you working with this property owner to address the issue. What is the status of their final occupancy certificate? Because these things all need to be addressed before that is issued. And thank you for educating me today about the difference between a temporary and a final occupancy, because it's also a condition of its occupancy certificate here, as in attachment C for the Aptos Village project. I think that's mostly what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Since this is again,
I just realized something. Reading this again, I was going to try and look through it and see what could be cut out. And I don't think John ever said when the building that was used as a firehouse was built. He talks about it, the lumber company building that they thought was going to be a firehouse when that was built. And he gives a background on that. But he never says, he just says by 1935 the department had outgrown the building. but it doesn't say. It was actually, it was built. They had there's a newspaper article that says the community got together and they built this hall. They built this building that was a fire station, but it doesn't say in here that building was built or when. Oh yeah, here it is. First buildings were laid for the new firehouse. It's in that little 1928 Sanborn map shows. That little pop out there to the right. So that is kind of confusing.
I think it's very confusing myself.
Yeah, it
has to follow it chronologically, it's like you're moving right to left, right to left.
Yeah, right to left, yeah. But anyway.
And I can work with the applicant to help tighten up the language, and I found it a little bit confusing as well. So.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Because usually you end up reading down when there's two columns all the way down the left, and then you go up and start down the right. Okay, again, this is an agenda item that does not require our approval in making a motion. So, Annie, you've got the comments that were made.
Yes, thank you.
And planning department will forward them on to the appropriate person. So if there's no other comments about the Aptos Firehouse, the slides of the 1989 earthquake are being deferred. And now we're moved on to new business item 8E, information regarding county budget for the Museum of Art and History and liaison position to the Historic Resource Commission. Annie?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Swift requested more information on this issue. So the county parks budget provides $156,594 for the operation and maintenance of the Museum of Art and History in Santa Cruz. The broad purpose of the funds is to support the mission of the museum. The contract with MA, as was noted, also provides for liaison services to the HRC and supports the development of historic preservation services throughout the county. So we contacted the museum, and Marla Novo is the liaison to the commission. And the museum indicated that Marla should be happy to connect with the commission regarding historic preservation work. And if the commission is interested, I can contact Marla and see if she's available to attend a future commission meeting so that there could be discussion with her and with your commission regarding how the two groups could coordinate more in the future regarding historic preservation.
Annie, does she want to be the liaison?
Well, she's already assigned as the liaison by the Museum of Art and History.
I see.
Because she's the art and history curator and
She's the
archivist and
History part.
Archivist.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of our discussion is what would we want her to do? What would be her responsibilities as a liaison
Well,
for us?
My question is, how long has the county been giving?
I'm sorry, can you speak as well?
How long has the county been giving $156,000 to Ma? And Ma is not responsible or required to say what they're doing with the money, except for what supports their mission. You know, and I think that's really nice to give Ma $156,000 for its mission, but I also think it would be nice if the county then gave some money to the Aptos History Museum, because it does a heck of a lot more.
Well, that's...
It does a lot too. And the San Lorenzo Museum does a lot for historic preservation, and they're not getting any money.
No.
So here's $156,000 going to the Museum of Art and History, and we didn't even know it. And God knows how long they've been getting this money. And so it's nice that they say, oh, you have a liaison, it's Marla. But as far as I can see, she hasn't really been doing anything. And
I can give you a little bit more information, and Annie can then provide what she's learned. I'm also on the Arts Commission, and the Arts Commission is under the Parks Department. So once a year, Nina Simon for MAW and Michelle Williams for the Art Council come and give a report on what they're doing with the money they're getting from the Parks Department. So the Art Council turns its money that it receives right around and gives it all out to scholarships, to artists. MAW originally, and this is before I was on the commission, was to pay for an archivist. And I don't remember the last one they had, but when Nina came in and reformatted and there was a bunch of budget cuts, the archivist was cut. And that's when Marla kind of took over both positions. And when Nina has come, the money in her report has gone toward, off the top of my head, going to expanding exhibits and partnerships with other museums, both across the country and internationally. It's gone toward building up Abbott Square and creating more community activities in that area. So more community-based things for MAW. And it has grown. It used to be more like 75 or 100,000, and they've asked for more money. And of course, if one is doing it, the other one is also asking for an increase. They come in together, give their reports together. There was never any mention of a liaison or anything in regards to working with the Historic Resource Commission. Now, my understanding is Nina is leaving at the end of this month, and she's going off and starting her own nonprofit. And I read that a few months ago, and I have no idea what's going on there, you know, as far as a replacement, reorganizing, or quite what's going on. And so what information did you get?
My understanding from the CAO's office is that we don't really have a sort of oversight role for the commission for the museum's work. So their suggestion was that we, work with the liaison, just to try and do more cooperation and see, if she can give us more information about how their funds are being used. And but that's sort of my general understanding.
My liaison, your position with the Arts Commission, is Kathy DeWild, who is at the Simpkins Center and is a parks staff person. And she's the one that does your role in that, taking the minutes, translating them, putting the packets together. I don't know if she would be able to provide that information, say from last year, what the funding that MAW requested, how it was, what it was said it was going to be used for.
I'm sorry, do you mean that Kathy DeWild from the Parks Department could provide an update to the HRC regarding how the money was used?
Yes.
I could certainly ask her if she's available to do that.
I mean, because the minutes, aren't they public information?
Oh, of course, yes.
So there might be something as
well, maybe we can get Marla to come and explain.
Struggling, having to raise their own funds and get no assistance from any type of agencies.
And they are supplying our commission with photographs and, well, you just look at this Aptos firehouse thing. John Himmel wrote that, put that together, and he's the chamber director. I mean, they don't get any money from anybody. Mm-hmm. If this money is available, I'm, just saying, why can't it be channeled into other venues?
Well, I have to say that I've been the liaison between the Blue Flag Committee, Marla, and this committee. And just because we've had some issues come up, and so I need my help connecting the two links. So there is something that has to be done, but mainly what we were discussing was commendations coming up at the Blue Flag. But we do need some kind of liaison, either one of us or one of them. But I don't think that money should be changing hands unless it's paying Marla's salary.
It's just that, we're in the county's in a position of paying a museum to provide services to the Historic Resources Commission, which are their services, historic assistance has, I have to say, been on the weak side for a number of years. And so, if this money's being given out and it has our name somehow attached to it, I'm just wondering why we can't redirect some of it.
Right.
That should be a question is, if this is going into the history community, so, it seems like the Art Council, MA, you've got art, you've got history. On the history side, why can't that be divided among, all the museums?
Especially since they're giving out money for art scholarships on the art side.
Right.
I mean, this is probably not our business, but it does have our name on it. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, one suggestion for your commission would be to draft a letter, noting the importance of historic preservation in the community. Maybe you could identify organizations that you feel contribute a lot to historic preservation, and whether the board would consider, providing funds to these museums in the future. That might be one way to approach this.
So we've got, 6 small museums in the county? You've got PV, you've got Capitola, you've got Aptos, you've got SLB. Am I missing anybody? Got Aptos. Capitola, Aptos, PV, SLB.
Yes. May I go back a little bit? Davenport always gets left out, and we tried to start, about 20 years ago, a real historical area, not an area, but people, and we had a funds. Now, would something like this have kept us going?
I don't know now, so for Davenport, do you have a organization with a board of directors and meet regularly?
We have, well, not now, we did. But we were running into, and I can't remember because it was 20 years ago. We had a board of directors and, all that kind of stuff. And it faded away.
So
now it's kind of, it's there, but it's not, the only person the only group that it's with is the museum.
But that's MAW.
Yeah, and
So-
MAW owns the jail, so that's one of the reasons why.
So that means you really kind of fall under, so there's 4 independent, then small museums that are totally nonprofit, not receiving any funding.
Yeah.
So if each one of those were to get, I don't know, 10,000 a year,
Right. How about someone who, has a way of putting things together and a title on the HRC, write this letter in our behalf, and we float it out and see what happens.
I might suggest too that rather than recommending the money be taken, as one option, be taken away from the Museum of Art and History, that we could still contact Marla and ask her to come and sort of discuss how the money is being used, and the letter could say, we appreciate the support to the Museum of Art and History for historic services. There are also a number of other museums that provide, services, and park preservation services, and could your board consider, supporting these other museums?
Well, would we approach them, or would we go to the Parks Department, since they're part of the Parks budget every year and is simply a line item on their budget? And talk to Jeff Gaffney and say, you know, and present to him, because he's new in. He's only been the Parks Director for what, 3 years? And so he's just picking up what's been there, you know, for years.
Yeah, I think it might make sense to approach the board directly rather than going to Parks, and see if the board would be interested in giving direction to the Parks Department or Planning Department, or other, you know, other appropriate venues for providing
To the
money,
law
but-
board rather than to the executive director.
Well, my suggestion was, rather than, I mean, you could certainly say that you think they shouldn't be giving the money to the Museum of History, but another way to approach it would be to say, we think there are several museums in the county that provide services that would benefit from, you know, from support from the county, something like that.
Right, yes, no, exactly, just, you know, to show some equality to the smaller, you know, historical preservation
So we
nonprofits.
could appoint you as a subcommittee of
One.
to draft this letter and then report back.
What I'm afraid of is, I don't know where the money is going. And I would like to know how it would, for instance, our jail and a few other little things that go around Davenport are desperately in need of repair, let's say every 10 years. And we've got other things that we're working on to see if we can't do some upgrade. But we do this under the auspices of the Museum of Art and History.
Right.
Because they own the jail. So that's kind of our headquarters. Now, if you didn't give them the $6,000, is that what they're asking for? Okay, if you didn't give them the $6,000, how would that affect us, me, and
No, $156,000.
Oh, $156. Okay,
$6,000.
how would that affect my group, and also maybe some other groups that I don't know that they're working with? So, before we make any decisions, I'd like to know exactly how not giving them what they've been having all these years, how it would affect Davenport.
I think what we are thinking of asking is, say, writing a letter saying, it's nice that Ma gets this money and it does wonderful things with it, and we have a liaison and we'd like her to come and talk to us. But there are also other groups in the community that could also use funding like that. And how about giving them some money? Is that right?
So I think, yeah, the first step would be to write a letter, ask Marla to come here, so we're better informed about this funding they receive from the county. We were wondering, as part of the historic preservations, how that funding is being used, and if we can maybe get a history of the last 5 years, maybe? Something like that. So just not what did you do last year, but we'd like to kind of see a trend on, you know, how your strategic planning is going for this money, for the funding you get. Do you have an earmark for a certain area that you're developing and growing, or, you know, is it something where it's going where you feel it's needed? You know, that's behind my thinking of asking for more than 1 year, kind of the historical trend.
I was just going to suggest, I don't know if we need a letter from the commission to make that request. Danny can do that and ask them to come forward and explain to you how those monies have been used in the past 5 years. I think where you might want to hear that report and then craft your letter to the Board of Supervisors requesting the additional funds, once you have that
Yeah.
information.
Whatever your suggestion is, because I am not well-versed in the inter-office politics between different departments and the best way to go about, contacting them, getting information, requesting things. So I greatly appreciate whatever suggestions along these lines you can make.
Yes, I can give Marla a call and talk to her and let her know you're interested in speaking with her, and, over the past 5 years, trying to give general guidance about the information you'd like, and then I could ask if she's available to come to the July meeting and just have a conversation with the commission. And
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Something else is that the museum also takes care of the cemetery out at Harvey West. And I think they've got a couple of other little things that aren't within the building that they're in, but they're kind of scattered. And maybe that money is going to them. And that,
Well, that's what we'll find out.
that's what you're going to, yeah, be sure that, that
yeah, I did speak with Jeff Gaffney, and he did indicate that his understanding is part of the money does go towards maintaining the county-owned properties, such as Davenport Jail and the Evergreen Cemetery. So he did indicate that
And the
his understanding was.
County owns the Octagon building.
Oh, outside, yes, that was the other one. Thank you.
And
Yes.
that's being completely redeveloped.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Into
seem that money,
Restaurant or something.
they would be using money from somewhere else for that.
I thought the developer who wanted, it's a coffee house or restaurant or something, and he's paying for all the renovation.
But we'll get more information.
Yeah, let's get more information.
And definitely, if possible, to have a few details within that, so it isn't just line items, Davenport Jail, Evergreen Cemetery, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but if you've got 15,000 going to the cemetery, what is that going for? Is it for cleaning and, cleaning gravestones, restoring broken gravestones, holding the, the 4th of July, no, Veterans Day event out there type of thing.
But Maz always does all that with volunteers.
So that's why, let's see if we can find out. Is there any other comments, or are we ready to open it up to public comment? All right, public comments.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner, resident of rural Aptos. This is amazing to me that $156,000 has been going to the Museum of Art and History without your knowledge of it. And I just want to make it clear that the County Board of Supervisors will be approving the budget in June, before you would have your next meeting. So whatever is happening now probably will continue this next year. Anybody can file what's called a Public Records Act request of both Santa Cruz County Parks and of the Museum of Art and History and get this information. It would not come with the same explanation that Marlo might give, but anybody could get that information. And Mr. Gaffney is new, that's right, because the Parks Department was completely absorbed by the Department of Public Works for a few years because of budgetary problems. So my question is, when did this $156,000 or whatever amount it is or has been, when did that get initiated, and what were the conditions that were put on that money? I have tried a number of times to get information from Ma. When I was putting together with Mr. Silvera a celebration of the 220-year anniversary of Via de Baranza 40, and Marla never returned my calls. I never got any information, I never got any help, and could not access any of the information and anything that's there because she just never returned my calls. So I really, like you, feel that the level of support for local history and keeping it alive and doing good education and public outreach has been a little bit lacking from Ma, and I would be very interested to see what they have been doing with this money. So thank you for this good discussion, and again, I would encourage you, if you want to know sooner rather than later, file a Public Records Act request. It's very simple to do, and they must respond. I intend to do this myself because I think it's quite amazing that this amount of money of county budget is going to something that doesn't really seem to be serving the purpose. When, as you say, there are many, and I want to include the Porter Memorial Library has a nice little museum in there too. You know, these could all benefit with some help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to 8F, our certificate of appreciation that we present to the Landmark Awards ceremony, which is going to be May 11th. I believe that's the day before Mother's Day. And I thought at one of the previous meetings we discussed a potential property. I don't remember.
I don't know that we had discussed it previously, but I was going to suggest the Silver Ranch Barn as a good candidate if your commission decided to award a certificate this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need somebody to make a presentation at the award ceremony.
I am totally swamped. I have no time to do any research on the Silver Barn. I'm sorry. If somebody can hand me something, I'll be glad to read it and give the commendation.
Reader, Carol Reader, lives there, and she's done a ton of research.
Well, I'm sure that if it's been through our committee, we must have some research on it somewhere. Annie?
Yeah, and we have the whole DPR form that's very detailed on the history of the property. So there's certainly, but I guess it'd be a matter of just, pulling out from that what whoever was doing the presentation wanted to present. But we definitely have a lot of information and research on the property.
Right, I'm really swamped. I cannot take on that job. I'll be glad to make the commendation, but I'm just
I'm
going
not
under
sure.
for time.
I'm not sure it's not too late to.
Oh, I did speak with, Marla contacted me, and I told her that the commission's meeting today, and if we let her know by this afternoon if the commission is doing a presentation, she said that would be okay, but we probably would need to get, I don't know whether you normally do, I can't remember if you normally do a PowerPoint or just provide remarks.
Provide remarks, and somebody has to print up the...
Yeah, I usually help Linda do the certificate. In the past, I've assisted with certificate.
Usually we have one or two photos, usually of something, maybe an original or very old photo and the way it looks today.
Right.
But you would have those, wouldn't you, from the presentation?
There are photos in the DPR form that we probably could pull from that to use.
Together, so.
Yeah, I don't remember if there's historic photos in there or not, or just current photos, but the photos are nice of the current building.
I'm going away, in fact, for the next 5. Really, I'm not really happy I'm glad that they're going to do a commendation, but maybe we could get somebody else on the Blue Flag Committee to do the digging.
To basically take Annie's information and kind of condense it into a two-slide presentation, because I know you go to them on a regular basis.
Who else is on the committee?
Don Lawrenson's on it? Don?
Well, let's have him do it.
That'd be good, because I'm not sure he's doing anything this year.
Yeah, if he wouldn't mind making the presentation for us.
Right.
He'd certainly know how.
And so...
So Annie could send him the DPR and the pictures, or Marla directly. Actually.
And then he could pull it all together, I shouldn't say pull it together, but basically pull out the, most appropriate information on a bullet point.
Yeah. I'll ask Marla and she'll ask him. How's that?
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so that's the... right, so the next agenda item is History Day participation. And that's being held at
Jade Street Park.
Jade Street Park. And it is a countywide community participation. So there'll be other museums and tables, informational tables. And we discuss this as part of our expanding reach into the community to let them know about our commission and what we do. And we, if I remember right, we talked about maybe sharing a table with the city's preservation council. Annie, were you able to contact anybody on the preservation council? Or do you, who's in charge of it? Or
I don't believe, based on the notes that Stephanie provided for the previous meeting, I wasn't aware that that was something you had asked staff to do. I did provide a copy of the brochure regarding incentives for historic buildings that I thought if you wanted information, that could be something you could hand out to the public, but I have not been in contact with the City Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, Joe Michaelak is the chair.
Oh, okay.
so, because we kind of talked about maybe sharing a table or maybe splitting the time, something like that with the city.
Yeah, but that's coming up really soon.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Many of us will be away.
What are we handing out? We have a brochure?
No, we don't have an actual brochure yet. That preservation that we just looked at, the incentives for preservation, this.
I think Linda had, when I talked with Linda, she had asked if I could, identify brochures that could be handed out, so we have that. And my other thought would be that, I know Norm Potabin and Phil Reeder had done, I think, brochures about walking tours, so I don't know if they're already going to be there, but that'd be something else that, could be a handout, and the county could certainly assist in printing brochures and things if you wanted to make them available.
But the event is when?
May 18th, so it's in
Yeah, I'll be gone.
2 weeks from this Saturday.
Why don't we all gone? Just ask them if they'd hand out. Or maybe just ask them to have whoever's there to answer questions. Give a phone number. I mean, what do we want people to know? Or we can wait for next year.
That's a good idea.
Let's give this a longer run. We don't have much approach on this.
Well, I think that's a good idea. But I would like to find out what's involved and would they be willing to work with us and kind of do a little networking in preparation for maybe next year. So if you don't mind, if you could, or somebody send me the name of the chairperson for the council. Just put it across the top. I don't mind contacting him when I get back sometime next week and let him know what our goal is and to find out what they're handing out and if they've done it before, kind of what to expect and that kind of thing, and that way we can better prepare, because I know we've talked about having some brochures explaining who we are, and what our role is in county historic preservation of structures.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I just thought you might like to know that I will be there with the
good.
Davenport Jail.
Oh, fantastic.
I have a nice long table, and you can come over and visit me.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you. And I will mention that to him, and that way we can get information and so on.
Alberta, if you're interested, I can provide copies of the one brochure I left at each of your dais there with the incentives for historic resources. If you want me to make that available to you, I can.
Sure, sure.
So that's this one,
Right.
and it's got
Okay,
the pictures on the back.
Pictures on the back, okay.
All right, so.
Excuse me, Alberta, after this, remind me and I can just make copies for you right now, so you can just take them with you. Does that will work for you after the meeting today?
Let's see, I'm picking Uber up just as soon as I can after this meeting.
Okay,
They're picking me up.
I can run upstairs and print some off for you.
All right, so,
Can I make a suggestion?
sure.
I'm starting to fade. We've been here since 9:30. Can we put off some of the agenda from July?
Yes.
Like the room
So actually, the one item that I think we should talk about today is the training.
Okay,
Okay.
The others, I think, could be deferred until
so the old
July.
business. So what the commission has decided on the History Day participation is that we will plan on participating in 2020, and that Chairman Linda Phillips will contact the chair of the Historical Preservation Council representing the city side and find out more information about the event so we can do better preparation for next year.
Yeah.
All right. So, and we will defer our old business until our July meeting
That we're going to discuss.
and go on to the last agenda item under new business G, discussing our training opportunities for 2019, sorry, I guess I'm fading too.
So the county does have $1,200 available for training, and this amount sorry, I'm also tired as well. This amount is available until the end of this fiscal year, which is June. In January, your commission, there's money available for training later in the year, but it sort of, I guess, in the long run, it sort of inches in another training opportunity for the commission, so you might as well use it, is basically my point. So I did contact Leslie Dill, and she is available to provide a training on the Secretary of the Interior Standards. I think that was one of the suggestions of your commission. I know that Mondays is generally a good date for the commission, so she is available on June 3rd, which would be the preferred date, or June 24th. And this could be scheduled as a special meeting of the commission, which will be open to the public. So that would be my suggestion for training.
And about what time would that be?
I know that, I think Susie, it would probably be the same time as our normal meeting. I think that works best for everyone.
Yeah,
So.
it does. It does work.
So if your commission can let me know if those dates, if June 3rd works. I don't know if people have their calendars
Checking
on.
my calendar
Okay.
right now.
Yeah, me too.
I can send out an email as well, and then, because Susie's also not here, and let people know if that date works, which date works best, and I can schedule that meeting.
Why do I have something that day? Yeah, I got a haircut.
with our friend.
I can send out an email and with the 2 dates, and then we can probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
Both dates are good for me,
Me too.
either the 3rd or the 24th. Is it, you said it would be in the morning probably?
Yes, I think it'd probably 2 hours, I think, something like that.
Yeah, either date works for me.
I think the 24th is going to work better for me.
Okay.
But I could also make the 3rd if I reschedule a haircut.
What's that second date?
The 24th. So either the first Monday of June or the 4th Monday of June.
Boy, that's great.
So this would be, you said on the Secretary of State
Of Interior Standards.
of Interior Standards.
It's a good chance to learn about. I always think the Secretary of Interior standards are something that are fixed on my brain like Teflon or something. It slides right out.
All right, then if this is, that is the last item, so at this point.
May I say comment, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you very much. I have a question about the exclusion of the information on the Merriman House. I know that the plans for that development are moving right along, so I just want to make sure that this commission's review of materials that would be very critical to any historic preservation of the within the development would not be lost with you not discussing it until July. Second of all, I want to just talk a little bit about the communication that I sent to your correspondence. It does raise other issues of historic significance in the Aptos Village project area. And I talked a little bit about this morning the significance of the Chinese and how that significance is really not even mentioned in the project's initial study. So as it is now, as I understand it, phase 2 will have no historic interpretation at all. But that really was the heart of the Chinese area with the Lam Madison apple dryer and vinegar works. And on the hillside above, Mr. Madison's, which is now a condominium development, but Mr. Madison's ranch was up there. And then there was a whole Chinese village on the hillside, kind of where it used to be where Granite Way connected to Aptos Creek Road. That was all a Chinese village with bungalows. And none of that's all going to go away unless there's some sort of interpretive work. I would also, and I brought this up in my communication, the historic railroad turntable that was really not discussed much in the initial study of the project, but it is critical. And there were remnants of it found when the developers dug up the area for Building 15, right across the way from Building 14, that your commission has discussed this morning. So I would like to ask that your commission consider putting on the agenda for next time other pieces of important historic information in the area of the Aptos Village that should merit some sort of interpretive panel somewhere. So that would include the Chinese influence, the Madison farm, the historic railroad turntable, and also the mapped and certified Ohlone Village area right behind the Aptos station that is also part of phase 2 of the Aptos Village project. Thank you very much.
So Annie, this second phase, that has no requirements or any recommendations for any additional historical interpretive?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the historic conditions of approval as approved by your commission were with the Apple Barn, the development of Apple Barn, as well as Building 14 for the former site of the firehouse. So there isn't a requirement that the project provide a comprehensive, review of Aptos history. Certainly, I imagine probably some of that information is provided by the Aptos History Museum. But the focus of the interpretation is, really about the
Because those are the two structures
Yes,
that were
exactly.
there.
Right, so it was sort of mitigation basically for the relocation or rehabilitation of the apple barn and the demolition of the firehouse.
I think my brain is fading, but
I understand.
I wanted to respond to a couple of things that Ms. Steinberger said. About the Chinese in Aptos, I remember this when they did the archaeological dig in 1978. When they built the depot project, they had the depot, Aptos Depot. So it was, who's the county archaeologist that just retired?
Oh, are you talking about the geologist, Joe?
No, I'm talking about the his license plate that says archaeology. I can't think of his name. Anyway, he did it. He did the dig. And everything they found from the dig, they gave to somebody, and then somebody finally gave it to John Hibble at the Aptos Museum. So most of the artifacts they found during the archaeological dig on the site where the Chinese village had been is at Aptos Museum, as far as I know. Rob Edwards, but anyway, he would know if there was anything more if that wasn't complete. And then about the turntable, I just came across a Historic Resources Commission Historic Resource Preservation Plan Review dated August 5th, 2011. And it's a paragraph, it says, Commissioner Swift recently raised concerns regarding historic site of a railway turntable historically located to the current location of the Aptos Firehouse, VFW Hall, page 15 of Exhibit J. Staff communicated with the owner of the Aptos Firehouse parcel, Joe Appenrott, who indicated that further investigations by a contractor, including excavation of 4 trenches, and that they found only occasional rocks, some particles of concrete, and some pieces of glass. No evidence that any significant portion of the railway turntable remains at that site. Letter from a property owner with a map showing approximate locations of the trench, shown in the 1892 Sandborn map is provided in Exhibit K. So, basically, they said they couldn't find anything in 2011. So, that's just 2 details that I knew of. And, about the Merriman House. Maybe if we could find out a little about what the status of the Merriman plan is, then we would know whether or not it was really important to discuss it.
Yes, I'd be happy to give a brief update on that.
Okay.
They have submitted their proposal. The updated DPR that I provided to the commission, basically they concur with the assignment of NR6 rating, meaning not historically significant. And the application has been submitted to the county. The planner is Lizanne Jeffs, and it will be scheduled for a public hearing. They are proposing the DPR form will be considered during the secret review. They are proposing to demolish the Merriman house in the application, but the county informed the applicant that at the community meetings, the public expressed an interest in sort of recognizing the history of the site as part of the project. So the applicant is proposing a historic mural. I don't know the details, but they are proposing a historic mural that sort of talks about Robert Merriman, and I think perhaps Live Oak history more generally as part of the project. And if your commission, generally your commission does not review projects or have purview over projects that don't involve designated historic resources. But if the commissioners are interested individually in following the project or providing comments to the planner, if you let me know, I can get your contact information to Ms. Jeffs to be notified of the project. It will be going to public hearing at some point. I don't know exactly when that will be. I think it might be in the summer sometime.
Can you send us an email on the date of when that is?
I don't think it's been scheduled for a public hearing yet, but if you're interested in finding out, if you let me know that you want to be added to the notification list, then I will get that to Lizanne, and then when there is a public hearing scheduled, you will receive notification of that.
Okay, I would like to know.
Okay.
And you're thinking maybe, if there's a public hearing going to happen before our next meeting, maybe we should look at this today. My brain is gone, but it might be important too.
I'm good for about another 30 minutes and then my time is up.
My time is up
clock.
actually at 10 minutes after 1.
Okay, so it looks like, say, we've got a little bit of time. If Annie, what about you?
I have another meeting, I gotta go.
You've got to leave?
Stephanie just had a good suggestion as well, which is that we probably, if we're having a special meeting for training in June, we could also put a discussion then, although I don't know for certain when this will be scheduled for hearing. I guess conceivably it could happen before June. I don't think it's likely, but I don't know for certain.
How does that sound? Okay, let's schedule the old business number 9C agenda topic, update on Merriman House, to coincide with our training, being scheduled sometime in June.
Okay.
And you'll let us know the date.
Yes.
All right. Is there any other comments before we adjourn? All right, then would someone please make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
All right, this meeting is adjourned at 12:46.